Okay, let's just dive in. Let's do it. What
All
what
right,
makes
man.
this week so crazy for you all?
Oh, we've just got a lot going on. We've got is great, but it's I think part of being in like an exciting, fast growing business is just there's always stuff going on. And Q4 is like what 10 days away now. And so with our clients being primarily in the retail vertical, that's kind of like that's the end all be all for 2022 is making sure that you hit Q4. So we've just got a lot of projects that are kind of going on concurrently. We've got a lot of I've personally got a lot of research projects that I'm trying to get wrapped up here in the next week. We've got an on-site that is happening in New York next week, and I haven't traveled since COVID started. So,
Wow,
well, that's not, I mean, I've traveled for personal, but
personal.
I haven't
Yeah.
like traveled for business since COVID started. And so, like, we were talking on Slack about travel, and like I was like, how do I do this? What are the, what are the rules for traveling? Like, what do people wear? Like, I don't even know. Like, it's been
Yeah.
so long since I've interacted with a client in like a real physical space. So that's been a trip, like trying to figure out all that stuff, and I had to figure out my uh, TSA pre-check number again.
Right.
Just all the stuff that goes with it. So yeah, just a lot, man. Just a lot going on, which is
That
fun. But it also, makes it tough to balance some things sometimes. And of course, this is the week my mom decided to come to town to visit. So uh,
of
that
course.
Gotta love
throw
that.
that on throw that on there too. I love seeing my mom, but it's just another thing that we got to balance.
It's stressful hosting, like anyone. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you
Well,
get
and
that
then
question? Did you get that question answered of what to wear? I'm curious. Like at these events.
uh, so I let me see if I can find it because it was funny. We were talking through it on Slack, and one of the guys I work with was like, "Oh, I don't know, business casual, I guess." And I was like, "I don't. What does that
What
mean
even is
anymore?
that?
Like, what
Yeah.
is that? Is that sweatpants? I don't like. I have no idea. Like, and so I think we decided that like jeans are okay, and I think it's going to be cool enough in New York to where I can wear a sweater, but like, I don't know. So I don't know. It feels like that's kind of go to. Like you can't really go too wrong with that. But I'm definitely not showing up in a suit. I know that much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
those days are behind most of us.
Yeah.
I
Um,
hope so.
so I haven't done a ton of travel, but I have done some since COVID. And I even did some, I think, like in the in-between period of the variant where like things opened back up for a month or two. And just it's definitely like an adjustment. Like brace yourself a little bit, give yourself some grace because it's like it's like almost like you know you got to practice that kind of stuff to be comfortable in those environments. I feel like, and it's definitely an adjustment getting back. But we're going to New York for a tennis conference in 2 weeks, so we're just going to
Oh,
miss you out
nice.
there. But yeah, that'll be the first one we've done. First big conference we've done since Shop Talk, which was the second week I started, and I was asked to go on like the Saturday after my first week, and I left the next day, I think, to Vegas. So
Yeah.
I
That's
was
awesome.
thrown
Big
into
turn.
it, but it was awesome. It was. Yeah, there's nothing like building relationships in person, and especially for you, this is a great segue. Like you haven't been at Tomorrow for super long, right? So
Mm-mm.
so this will be the first time meeting the team in person, I would imagine, and all that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, which makes like my clothing selections even more important
Even
at
more,
that,
yeah.
I've got two sets of people I've got to impress. No, I've been with Tomorrow since May, and so this will be the first time that I've met most of the folks off camera. One of the women that I used to work with at my last company actually told me about the opportunity at Tomorrow, and so I've seen her in person before, but everybody else, this will be the first time. So it's exciting. It's been, gosh, 4 months now, where I've just been, building relationships over Zoom and Google Hangout or whatever the tool that we're using is. And it's exciting to be able to get an opportunity to actually kind of shake hands. And I don't feel you can form those like really deep relationships with people over Zoom. Like I just don't feel like you can do it. Like you got to break bread with people and shake their hands, and like actually like get to know them as people. And I'm excited about that because that's something that it's probably the only thing I miss about going into the office is like actually seeing people and talking to people and like being able to interact with people in real life. So it'll be nice to get back into that mix a little bit, but then also be able to come back to my house and work from there after the week's over. So
after the fun, yeah, no, I totally agree. I was just telling somebody this like last week. I was saying that I just mentioned the Shop Talk trip. It was my second week, and a ton of our partners were there. And I really feel like we would not have been able to move as fast as we did in building the program if I didn't get that FaceTime with them early on. Like it just, I don't feel like, I can't build relationships over Zoom or over Slack or whatever. But I feel like no matter what, like the relationship is up leveled when you meet in person.
Yep.
And it allows you to like build trust and then work more collaboratively toward like a common goal once you've sort of established that. So I couldn't agree more. That'll be a great experience for you, I'm sure, as it was for me early on. But
yeah, I feel like actual relationships and like your connection with people is filled in the time like between meetings on your calendar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like in those actual meetings, but that space that exists between there where you're like, oh, I've got 15 minutes. Let's go get a cup of coffee or let's, sit around and shoot the breeze. Like that's where relationships are formed. And when you're on Zoom, it's like, I've got a great relationship with my cat right now. But that's about it, like my dogs are okay. But, other than that, like it's, and I say that jokingly because I've got a great relationship digitally with the folks that I work with, and we're all remote. So everybody's kind of accustomed to it. But yeah, just getting that kind of like that feel for who they are as a person is going to be real cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love a good office chit chat. I think that too, if I'm just going to add onto what you both have been saying of like, I think it's just the acceleration of building relationships. If you're in person, it just happens a lot quicker. Like I think building the relationships is definitely possible via Zoom, and now everyone's accustomed to it. But I think the acceleration is like the part that I also love, like Andy and Noah you've been talking about.
Yeah, no, sure. Exactly.
Yeah, Mariah is at our office right now, which is like a mile away from my house. And I think she goes in two or three times a week, and I go in like maybe twice a month. So
yeah, I'm committed to the office. Yeah,
I might awesome. See Mariah more like, out on a weekend than I do in Indianapolis than I do at the office. But it's nice to have that opportunity when you want to get some FaceTime with the team. My problem is I'm literally just like, in Indy.
I was so sports betting just became legal in Kansas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was like thinking of, and I got like I don't know if you guys have sports betting in India. Okay. Like every sports betting company is like, I would like to give you $200 for free. And I'm like, how is this even like possible? Right. And so anyways, like I got suckered into something and I had $25 to bet, and I was going to bet on the lowest scoring team in the NFL for this last week. And like the one team I was not going to pick was the Colts. Like I just wasn't going to do it, but I would have won a lot of money if I would have picked them.
Yeah, 0. Big old goose egg. I see your boys are 2-0 though. The Chiefs, which is good.
Yeah, we had a knockdown drag out on Thursday. It was the Chargers are legit, man. So was. I was happy that we walked away from that one because they beat us the last 2 times at home, I think. So it was nice to be able to stop that streak.
For sure. Mariah, we can probably just like somehow figure out how to work the NFL into the name of this podcast because I think it's probably going to be a recurring theme.
And I'm just going to be like, yep, I have this contribute here. Building relationships, yep, that's all me. NFL, got nothing to add.
Just smile and nod. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Colts, I know they're our team here in Indy.
They are
The
here.
max I would know is Notre Dame football, but that's really still a small sliver of my knowledge.
Not too
But
horrible.
we should workshop
Hopefully.
it into the title.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. So you mentioned 4 months at Tomorrow. Would love to hear like a little bit about your career progression leading up to this role and now overseeing strategy at Tomorrow. What all you're responsible for.
Yeah. I've had kind of a crazy path. I guess nobody really has a normal path to where they end up, but my dad was kind of a serial entrepreneur when I was growing up. And so he owned a company that sold janitorial supplies. So his saying was, like everybody can decide that they don't need a bicycle or a car, but everybody's always going to need toilet paper. So that's what he sold. I was actually talking to a company that sold toilet paper at one point, and they were like, the market penetration for every product is not 100%, and that includes toilet paper. So I was like, that's terrifying and disgusting at the same time. But so when I was 13, I was working cleaning the office that he had, and I just kind of grew up through the family business. And he moved into the shoe business at one point. And so I started working in our shoe stores that we had. So we had 5 retail shoe stores. And over the course of, oh gosh, from the time I was 17 till I was 35, so I guess almost 20 years, I worked in the shoe business. And at the end, I was running all of our businesses. And we were competing pretty heavily against Amazon and Zappos at that point. And as you might imagine, they were winning. And so my brother and I decided that we should try to figure out how to sell stuff online. And so I think I Googled like at one point, like the name of our ERP and open source or something like that, open source e-commerce, and Magento came up.
Okay.
And so my brother and we didn't know PHP, XML, HTML, CSS, nothing. And so he and I worked for about 6 months and built a Magento site, got it tied into our ERP, got orders coming through, emails going out. I mean, basically set up like a whole digital ecosystem, and started selling stuff online. So that was kind of my first foray into selling things online.
And was that the shoes only?
Yeah.
Or did you kind of branch
shoes
out?
only.
Okay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it wasn't the silver bullet that we needed it to be. We didn't become the next Zappos. But I ended up needing another job and found a place up here in Kansas City that was a Magento shop. And so I started as a business analyst and then kind of worked my way through from the technical side, defining database fields and how this form needs to work and how, user stories and all of that, through to our strategy practice, and went into our strategic planning group, which was kind of cross-channel, like looking at from acquisition, engagement, retention, like all sides of the funnel, and what we need to do within each one of the channels that we're operating in order to execute campaigns and then effectively execute things on the website. And so spent a lot of time doing that and working with, some really great Fortune 500 brands, trying to bring some of their D2C aspirations to life. And then I moved into our director position of e-commerce and was kind of leading up that team and working on the strategy component and our strategy offering there as well. And there's a lot of consolidation that was happening in the industry at that time, and we got acquired, and it just wasn't quite the fit that I was looking for. And so my friend that was at my last company ended up going over to Tomorrow, and she actually, one of our friends that still worked at the company I was at said, "Hey, I heard from Sarah that this thing is open." And so I looked at it, and it was kind of history from there. So got to interview with Joe and Marco and Olivia, who are the co-founders of the company, and just really enjoyed chatting with them and the direction that they were going with things. and came on board back in May.
Yeah, we met Marco a couple months ago. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is quite the story. I'm curious how, like in all of your experience, how you ended up like gaining the technical knowledge to take on that first analyst role. Because it sounds like if you were, involved in like data formatting and all of that stuff, building out forms, like you picked up some technical prowess along the way. So, like, what do you attribute that to, or did you just once you got that role, like figure it out once you got there?
I'm surprised that like my head is still round because like I bang my head against the wall all the time. So like I'll just sit there and I will do something over and over and over again until I get it figured out. My wife, we lived in Wichita when I worked for my family's business, and there was one time where my wife and I were driving up to Kansas City we were going to a concert, I think, and she was driving the car and I had my laptop open and I was literally reading the Magento manual as we were driving, like the handbook for Magento. And I just read a lot, and I'm not overly scared to try things. And so, I'll read and try something out and see what happens. And if it doesn't work the way that I want it to, then I'll try it again. And, at some point I'll either say, well, this is, an absolutely colossal waste of time and I'll stop doing it. Or I'll end up with something pretty cool. So, and a lot of the time I end up with something that's pretty cool, but I've got to admit there is a lot of the time where it ends up being a colossal waste of time, but at least I've learned something in the process.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm sure, running your own businesses sort of force you to have that mindset of like, there is no other option but to just dig in and figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, when your mom's sitting there telling you to do something, you're like, well, okay, I guess I'll figure out how to do that.
So that's the real motivator.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like just remembering when I didn't do what she asked when I was a child. Oh, okay. Well, I'll do that now, Mom. You got it.
And now she's there visiting this week and nothing's changed, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Now I just have to drive her around. That's
right.
Sort of her driving me around.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's shift focus a little bit to tomorrow. You're there now, been there for 4 months. Talk a little bit about your role and sort of like what you feel makes tomorrow unique. Obviously, like for us, we partner with a lot of agencies. We focus on sort of the top tier Shopify and Klaviyo shops. So obviously, like building your way up or your reputation up in those ecosystems and getting the badges and all that is great. But like we're really curious to know what our agency partners that come on the podcast like really truly feel their differentiator is in the space, given that it's so crowded.
Yeah. I think there's a couple. We really are aligned well with an enterprise methodology to delivering our work to our clients. That was the thing that really attracted me to Tomorrow. I mean, I'd been working with large brands for a long time. And typically when you think about Shopify, that hasn't been the first thing that comes to mind, right? Like it's typically been like, oh, the guy down the street needs to start selling, his soap online or whatever. And so he goes to Shopify. But I think Shopify is doing a great job of positioning themselves to really be the easy solution for companies that are looking to go direct to consumer to have that avenue and not have to spend an exorbitant amount of money to get to the place to where they can actually have those transactions going through. And so, from the Tomorrow perspective, having that enterprise level methodology that we've brought from other disciplines, so Magento and Salesforce Commerce Cloud, into the Shopify ecosystem, I think has really been a breath of fresh air for some of those clients that are used to working that way, but haven't necessarily had the avenue through an agency to actually be able to operate in that capacity. So that's been, I think that's been a big point of differentiation for us. I think there's also this there's this really unique confluence of skills that we're building that is like really great creative, that's being driven by Marco and his team, and then really great technology that's being driven through Olivia and her team, and then really great strategy and analytics that's being driven through Joe and his team. And so I'm really, proud of the fact that I get to help them build out those capabilities. And what we're working on now is a very strategically led way of going about guiding our clients to the work that we should do next for them. So there's the whole goal of like, I need to build a website. And everybody that comes to us is hoping to build a website, but that's really getting you to the starting line, right? That's not actually running the race. And so I think where we really excel is the ability to understand what our clients are looking to do and then work with them across all of our different disciplines to build out a really robust roadmap that will help drive them towards those success metrics that they've identified. And so part of that is just like having smart people on your team, like you've got people that have experience and they've done it before and they know what's up and like how to go about getting this stuff done. But then the other side of it is having the data to support the work that they're trying to do. And so we're really working hard to build out that data infrastructure to allow us to, one, recognize the decisions that need to be made, and then two, make the decisions in a way that not ensures, but helps ensure. I'll say the euphemistic thing there, helps ensure that our clients are moving towards the success that they've hired us to help them achieve.
Would you say I had the question on the top of my head when you talked about the enterprise approach, like what makes an enterprise approach different than like what the typical SMB and mid-market Shopify stores have done? It sounds like a more data focused approach is part of that. Would you agree? And like, would you add anything?
Yeah. So when I first got into the agency world, I had just gotten done building, my brother and I had built the website that we had talked about. And I was interviewing with a guy, and I was actually initially interviewing for an e-commerce strategy position. And he said, well, I don't think you have enough experience in e-commerce strategy, but we have a business analyst position open. Would you be interested in that? And my response to him was, I really like business and I really like analyzing things. So yes, let's talk. Because at that point, I just needed a job, I was like, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And so he started talking to me about like, oh, well, what documentation did you do for the website? And how did you go about doing the documentation, things like that? And I pointed behind me. We didn't have like cool things like Zoom at that point. And so you couldn't see me, but pointing behind me, I said, well, I've got a whiteboard that's got a bunch of notes on it. And that's basically what I worked off of. And I think like this is anecdotal, so this is not my personal experience with other development shops, but a lot of times there's a level of rigor that surrounds the documentation of the work that you're actually doing that doesn't get done. And so when you come to a point to where you've scaled and you need to go to an agency, and that agency needs to understand what it is that has been built on the website so that they can know what foundation they have, it's just not there. There's also, I think, a lack of documentation and a lack of transparency in what is happening during the build, and a lack of sign off from the client often leads to a set of deliverables or a set of features that are on the website that don't match to what they're actually looking for. So, you can work with them for 4 to 6 months. You deliver the website to them and they're like, what? I needed it to do this, but it doesn't do that. So I think that's part of it is the infrastructure that we have built around the documentation, requirements gathering, understanding what it is that you need the site to do. We also have a very robust approach to the way that we handle user experience and creative. And so the way that we go about identifying the modules that need to be built and the ways in which they need to operate, and like the motion elements that are associated with them, all of that is really well executed on our team, which I think in the e-commerce space is fairly unique, especially with larger brands, because I think they tend to focus more on making sure this gets integrated into our ERP, and then it needs to flow to our WMS, and then it needs to go out to whoever's handling our fulfillment. So, and like those are the things that people focus on, and the front end tends to get a little bit less love in that situation. So I think that's the creative side. And then from the technology side, we have a really experienced team that has, like, we're basically the best devs in the Shopify ecosystem, if you ask me. I mean, we have, I think, more of the top 10 Shopify clients at Tomorrow than any other agency. We're invited to pretty much all of the betas that they have going on for their new features that are coming out. They ask us to contribute to code, review code, do different things on the technical side. And so I think we're well positioned there from just an experience and just like development methodology to support what they're looking to do. And I don't, in a more kind of mid-tier environment, I don't think you're going to get quite that level of experience within the developers that you're going to get at Tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some great anecdotal evidence as well, that you guys have carved out a great sort of like niche in the space. And I know the first time you and I talked, I thought it was really interesting that, we sort of reflected on like your enterprise experience and how the Shopify ecosystem is different, because in the enterprise space, like there's a ton of consolidation, right? Like you can build almost everything off of Salesforce if you wanted to within the Salesforce ecosystem now.
They want you to think you can, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right. And then brands are like, well, why can't you just, as my agency, go build it on Salesforce? And it's like, well, it's just not quite that easy, right? But in the Shopify world, like there's an app for that, right? There's 12 different apps that Tomorrow's working with, at least, I'm sure. But they all offer different sort of like data sets, right? That power not just the site, but like the marketing behind it. And I want to shift focus to retention here soon. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about how that has been a change for you throughout the career, and how you're thinking about it now that you're in the Shopify space?
It was a big change, and honestly, it wasn't one that I was really prepared for when I took this position, because I mean, I remember we worked with a client for a number of years. And this was at my last agency, and we built out their entire subscription program for them. Like we built them a subscription platform in Magento. And, you think about that now and people are like, why would you do that? And because it's, just like not our, it wasn't really our bailiwick, Mm-hmm. And, but I don't think I realized when I came into the Shopify ecosystem just how ingrained the different applications were in just the functioning of the website overall. And so that's been really, really unique. And so it's been, on one hand, it's been great because I think there's more innovation that happens that way, right? Like there's more competition within different parts of the customer experience, which I think then begets more innovation within those spaces. But then it's also difficult from the agency side because it's hard. Like, not only do I have to learn Shopify and all of the stuff that Shopify does, and then all of the things that they're releasing all the time, but then it's like, oh yeah, well, there's like 15 different things that you need to learn about as well that surround Shopify. And all of those have really cool features and really cool reporting and really cool ways to interact with them. And so it's, as somebody that is helping clients identify choices that need to be made and then the direction that will best help them succeed in those choices, it's a big data set that we've got to kind of parse through in terms of like what things we need to pick and where they need to be selected from. So it's been a big shift, but it's exciting though. It's with Magento and Commerce Cloud, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, it'd be 6, 8, 10, 12, 24 months before like you had something that you were able to release that was going to be able to work. And with Shopify, it's literally like I just go and click that button. And it's like, well, that works now,
Right.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that big data set that you mentioned, like there's so many different possibilities of like applications and just the Shopify ecosystem. Have you seen any kind of patterns that have emerged in terms of what brands come to tomorrow, like to you and your team about in terms of what like success looks like to them, like what metrics they're trying to solve for? Is there any kind of like pattern in the enterprise space?
I think, yes, conversion's the one that we hear all the time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody wants more conversions. And I think that's good. Well, so revenue and conversions, I think are like, that's the end all be all, right? But I think when I look at it from a strategic standpoint, like I'm a math nerd, like at heart. And so like when I think about it in an e-commerce capacity, revenue is equal to sessions times your conversion rate times your average order value. And I think all of those things on the right-hand side of that formula are all intertwined, right? So it's like I can really increase my conversion rate super high if I drop my average order value in half. People are going to be like, whoa, yeah, okay, that seems like a good deal. I'm going to buy that. And conversion rate's going to go way up. Or if I increase my sessions by a lot, more than likely conversion rate's going to go down because there's more eyeballs on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that more people are going to purchase. And so I think that something that's a little bit more near and dear to my heart is a more kind of full funnel way of looking at metrics. So as opposed to just really focusing on the revenue side, what can we do to focus on that acquisition, that engagement, that retention side of things? And the one that I've worked on the longest and the most has been CLV, and just trying to figure out like what customer lifetime value looks like. And I'm hearing CLV more and more and more as I talk to clients, but there's not a great and consistent way to measure it that has been established yet, especially within a retail context. So if you think about like, I don't know, I was a Sears customer at some point. Like I bought stuff from Sears. And then over the course of time, I stopped buying stuff from Sears. I couldn't tell you when I went from, yes, I am a customer for Sears to no, I am not a customer for Sears any longer. Like, I don't know when that happened, but it did. And so that kind of is a difficult thing for companies to try to reconcile with, especially within CLV. Is like, how do I recognize when a customer is no longer a customer? And then what do I do in order to try to switch them back over to being a customer? I don't think Sears is going to switch me back, but at some point, I'm sure they're going to try. And
After
so
hearing this, they're obviously going to have to.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And so I think that to me is really the way of understanding your business in one kind of rolled up metric. And so I like the fact that people are talking about it more and more and more. But I think there's more of a generalized understanding of what that number is, as opposed to being like really specific and being able to measure and track it over time.
Yeah. It's also tough because by industry too, there's so many different specifics. So like you mentioned Sears, right? Like that's like furniture. It's probably a long time period between you make another repeat purchase, right? So it's like even by industry, it gets even more specific. But I love that you brought up that CLV point because it is hard to track, especially in retail.
Or even like look at Costco, right? Like I buy toilet paper from Costco. I don't know why I'm talking about toilet paper so much.
Toilet paper, NFL,
yeah, right. I buy toilet paper from Costco frequently, but like I've also bought appliances from Costco, not frequently. And so like even within categories, within retailers, there's going to be different purchase cadences within those different categories. So it's tough. I mean, it's hard to zero in on it and get an understanding of what it needs to look like. But I do like the fact that people are starting to talk about it more, because I think it is something that's impactful.
Yeah, I'd argue that like there is a pretty clear reason why CLV has become so much more in the forefront than ever before. And I would argue that like that's because acquisition is so much harder now,
Right.
especially in our space, in the Shopify space. Like it is a crowded set of merchants, right? And with acquisition costs going up and it just being tougher in general, more competitive, there's a bigger focus on like retention, obviously. And
Yeah.
that's what we focus a lot of our time and effort thinking about. Um, but I'm curious, like from the more holistic, including acquisition and retention, is there one, coming from the math guy, like, is there one formula that you use to evaluate or that you ask clients to use to evaluate CLV across the board, or does it actually vary by client and industry vertical, what have you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies, but typically if you can get a data set that is um, robust enough and has enough data points in it, you can kind of start to tease out what those things need to look like, and you can start using predictive elements in order to predict what the CLV is going to look like for certain people. But I mean, talking about retention, uh, I always like to ask people like for a value prop for their e-commerce site, like, and I always ask it specifically, like, what is the thing that's going to get a customer to your site to make the first purchase, but more importantly, what is the thing that's going to have them come back to make the second purchase?
Mm,
Because you can always buy that first purchase. And you can, so, if your average order value is $140 and your cost of goods sold is $70, you're going to make $70 in gross profit on that transaction. And you may be willing to spend $100 on media in order to get that $70 transaction. So you're going to lose $30 on it, but with
right.
the anticipation that that person's going to come back and make subsequent purchases. So then, like, what is the thing that's going to drive them to come back and make that second, third, fourth, and fifth purchase? And that's the hard question, right? Especially when you're working with direct to consumer companies that have been like established companies that are looking to go to direct to consumer. What's the advantage that you're going to offer your customer that has not been offered from somebody like Amazon or Target or Walmart or Sears? Like, what is that thing that you're going to provide them that they can't get somewhere else? It's not going to be pricing.
Right.
So like it's probably not going to be speed of delivery. And so really it
Mm,
has to come down to the like unique experiences that you can provide on the website that are going to keep people coming back to purchase from you in the future. And people have a really hard time kind of thinking through that because it flips the business model on its head. Like it moves companies from being like a wholesaler and all I have to do is get the stuff over to Target to a position of where they actually have to make their own market and then continue to like make sure people come back to that market to get the products.
right. Yeah. From unique experience perspective, I think I know how you'll answer this, but do you think about that more from like a product? Like, how does my product stick out from what I could go buy on Amazon? Or do you think about that more as like a user experience? Like when I'm shopping on the site, it's different from the big box retailers or in Amazon because it's personalized in this banner. Or maybe it's a
Yeah,
combination of both.
yeah, I think there's the endless aisles concept, or like the breadth and depth of product selection. So like I think Nike's a great example of this. They do this really well. So if you go to Dick's and you're buying a pair of running shoes from Nike, you maybe have 12 to choose from, right? Like that are on the wall at Dick's, and maybe they've got 8 of them in your size. If you go to Nike online, then you've probably got 60. And so like the breadth and depth of the product selection that they're offering is going to be unparalleled versus what you would be able to get at a traditional retailer. So I think that's one, is like just making sure that you've got product that's available for people to buy. I think the user experience part is really important, but I don't think this is one thing where I think that established companies could really pull from digitally native companies to start building out that user experience in a way that is unique and fresh and something that they're not going to be able to get at Amazon. Like it or not, Amazon has basically trained everybody on how to shop on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I go and I get a category page, and then I get a product detail page, and it's going to be laid out like this, and the reviews are going to be at the bottom, and like everybody knows that. And at some point, Amazon gets to be kind of boring. Like there's not a lot of people that want to go and just like browse Amazon, because it's just that
Yeah.
that's kind of boring. And so like I think one thing that you can do on your site is to have that browsability component or that discoverability component to it that you're not going to be able to get from some of the competition. And so the user experience that supports that. One thing that we like often talk about, and this is more for like highly considered purchases. So think about things like, oh, I don't know, mattresses are the one that comes to mind for me. It's like you're gonna have a mattress for like 10 years or 12
Right.
years, right? Like you're gonna sleep on it every night. And so I think that's why mattress companies were like so popular for a while. And then Casper kind of like flipped this on its head. But what you need with a mattress is like a salesperson that's on the website that can help guide you into the mattress that makes the most sense for you. And so one thing that we think that our customers can do that typically can't be replicated by Walmart or Amazon or Target in terms of a user experience um, type of capability is like helping customers find products really well. And so, you know, what questions would a salesperson answer? And how would they guide you to the product that makes the most sense for you?
Yeah.
And so we're working on building out a lot of those unique experiences on sites to help people get to the product that they want. And some of the stuff Shopify is doing, like with React and like the headless kind of infrastructure that they're building out, allows those things to be seamlessly like woven into the experience. So like I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff like that that pops up to where like it moves from you know, just self exploration to where you come to the website and the website really starts to act as the salesperson that helps guide you to the thing that you need.
Yeah, I love the zero party data use cases, like basically gamifying the capture of that by, unique quiz like experiences, and then navigating customers through the site based on their preferences, and from the answers that they provided you, and
Yeah.
willfully so, right? Like I think that that's going to become even more important beyond just personalization. It'll probably become more important from like a legal and compliance standpoint, as cookies go away, and
Yeah.
second and third party data becomes like a thing of the past. Any other tips and tricks on like personalizing the experience, and sort of how you think about that, for merchants?
I think it's super important. My experience with personalization has been, it's been tough. You know, I think there's a gap between the customer expectation and the or even the merchant's expectation of personalization and what's able to currently be provided easily. And so I'm excited to kind of see what advancements are going to be made there. So like when you look at things like how are CDPs going to reshape personalization in the on-site experience and things like that, I think that's really cool and unique. But it has to be done in a way to where there's not like we worked on personalization for a company probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, before it was kind of like all the buzz. And we went to our client and said, okay, so we've got this great model that's built out, and we think we understand how the personalization aspect needs to work, and we can activate it for you on the website. But we're going to need your creative team to build out 5 times the assets that they're currently building. And they were like, yeah, they can barely get the number of assets out that we need right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to increase it 5-fold. And so, I think there needs to be some solutions there in order for it to really start to make sense. Like, how are we going to be able to do this without forcing people to, increase their workload by 5-fold to make it happen? And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I'm excited to see where that goes, because that's really going to be, I like that kind of, your website has become your salesperson type of
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And I think that's it, right? Like, how do we harness the data that we have about the customers that are coming and their intentions and what they've clicked on, and then how do I make that into a really unique set of recommendations for what it is that they're going to want or need to purchase. Like, I think that's the end all be all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think the other, I love what you said about like the human resource component, and the fact that personalization does take a lot of thinking through, I think, but like, especially in the Shopify ecosystem, all of the apps, that you're plugging in across the board have some components that allow for personalization. It's just about knowing how to connect the dots between them. I think that a lot of brands, though, think that it's going to be a much bigger undertaking, or they don't have the resources, or they're not working with the right agencies. And then they result to just like focusing on, okay, what's like the average? Or they do some like segmentation that's pretty basic that ends up just like not really fitting into, not really checking the box of to what you said, Andy, of like what the consumer expects from a personalized experience. And I just think a lot of brands just think it's too hard, so they resort to the mean rather than like understanding what they can accomplish with their stack or with their agency partner.
Yeah, I mean, or there's even like really basic stuff that I think companies have a really hard time doing. Like, I subscribe to an email list of a very large retailer, and they continue to send me only emails about women's clothes. And like, I've told them like 5 times, like I'm a guy, I would prefer to have like men's clothes sent to me. And still, like, they will not change my preferences. And so I think there's very like base building blocks like that like large companies have a hard time getting over. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the like really nice things about Shopify and the ecosystem of apps that surrounds it is that there are AI driven, unique, personalized elements that like kind of can be plugged in out of the box. And maybe it's not going to change your entire site experience and make it so that, like, I only see men's clothes when I go to that retailer's website, but it does give me unique references or unique products to pick from, or recommendations that make sense for me based off of my browsing patterns and things like that. So I love that. I also think there's like really small personalization events that can happen. Like, I kind of framed it up as micro personalization at one point, to where, is there a setting, or can the site remember my size selection that I've made as I've been browsing through? And then as I go to each PDP, only select that size on the PDP, or have that size defaulted on the PDP when I get there. Or, we talked with you all about like having a thing in the header to where if I've got something that's out for delivery, like how can I click on that, have it automatically be there when I go to the site, and then get information about my delivery and when it's going to be there. I think there's just like, there's loads of like little nuanced things like that could actually enhance the customer experience, that aren't a complete flip of the website and making it so that, there's a completely new experience for everyone that comes there, but it can make the user experience better. And I don't even think customers would know that that's a personalization thing that's happening, but it is. I think little things like that could be a game changer for Shopify and other sites.
Yeah, I feel like even you saying like a customer might not even realize like it's the personalization aspect, but you feel it subconsciously, like that it creates like less friction for you, like the size, right? Like, oh, it's already auto-filled, or the like banner for your track meets, like you go on the website and it's like, oh, it's right there. Like, you might not be like, oh my gosh, that's so personalizing. That's probably not like the narrative, unless you're in this space, that you'd be saying to yourself, and like notice how efficient that is. But it still aids in that like user experience, and that you're like, oh, that was actually a really nice shopping experience, even if you don't exactly know why, or like have that descriptor of like, oh, it's personalized to me. I love this.
Yeah. Like, I'm 6'4". and I can't wear like normal sized clothes. And so like if the sites where I buy clothes, like if I could go back to that site and not have to hit that freaking filter like every single time that I go there, that'd be great. I would love it. And it's just a small thing, it's like bring your wife flowers on a Wednesday afternoon. It's just small things that make them happy.
A nice little act of
100%.
kindness.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I listen to a ton of like our recorded sales and customer success calls just because, especially as I like got on board, Andy, very similar to you. Like I was new to e-commerce. I came from the enterprise space. So, and like in partnerships, I have to know all of the apps, what they do, how they work with all the rest of the stack, what agencies like to work with what apps and where will be like a good fit for them based on that stack. So I found like the call recordings to be really helpful in that. And one of the interesting things I found early on for new sales conversations was brands would say like, we'd show like an experience of a client that we work with or like our logo page. And a brand would say, the director of e-commerce or the founder of the brand would be like, oh, now that you show me that, like I had a great experience with Built the other day. But he didn't know, right? Like you don't consciously know I'm going to back to the Built site to track my package versus a UPS site a lot of times. But the experience itself is so good and seamless that it actually sticks with you and drives repeat purchases really without you even knowing that they sent you down a different experience than most e-commerce brands are currently powering. So, but sort of by default. So I find that intersection of like what the client or the customer is actually aware of, and then like driving behavior, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a touch point with the customer is a touch point with the customer,
Right.
and if you're not taking advantage of those touch points and trying to maximize them where you can get them, it's hard to get somebody to come to your website. Like it is super hard and it's
Right.
expensive. And so, the more that you can kind of capitalize on each of those touch points that you can get, and you're basically getting those for free, like you might as well take advantage of it when it happens. So I think that's where you guys do a great job is you're able to take those things that are, a lot of customers would consider to be mundane,
Right.
but then turning them into something that is exceptional versus what they've become accustomed to. And then also giving brands the chance to actually have that interaction point with that customer again. I think it's awesome.
Love to hear that. Appreciate that. We like to think so too.
Very valid.
So we just wrapping up here. Give us one tip or trick or piece of advice that's helped you throughout your career.
I don't know if I can swear on here. I don't even know if this is a swear, but I tell I've got two kids. They're 17 and 13, so they're I guess like technically like old enough to like use swear words at this point. But I tell them all the time, like just don't be a dick. Like I mean that's like it's like half of it, like
it is.
I don't know. I was always like mildly intelligent growing up, and I think there's some benefits there, but especially in a services type of business, if you can make it so that like people enjoy working with you, so you do smart things, but people actually like working with you, they're going to come back and ask you to do more smart things. If you do smart things and you're just a dick to people are going to be like, man, no, there's like another smart guy over there. I'll go talk to him, and like, they're not going to come back. And I feel like it's, I don't know, I'm probably older than both of you combined, but when I was a kid, there was like this whole like ethos within the business world of just like, you have to be ruthless and like, you have to like just squeeze blood from a rock, like that was like the mantra behind things. And I feel like there's been big changes within like the way people work. And I love to see that because it is more inviting and it is more open and it is more collaborative and enjoyable than what it used to be. And, I think that as time goes on, I hope to continue to see that happen because it makes life so much better if you're just not a dick to people, and then people probably won't be a dick back to you, you know? And it's just
Right.
like, oh, all right, well, this worked out okay.
This is kind of nice,
Yeah.
harmonious.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally agree with that advice. I think that it's like at least half the battle. And I'm going to draw a comparison back to my role here at Malomo. I've been in partnerships though really, I started a company out of school, and a big part of my role as running that was partnerships early on. So it's really been my entire career has had to do with partnerships. And one thing you notice like kind of early on is there are multiple solutions that in like whatever ecosystem you're in, your partners have options most likely. Like there are very few platforms that have the luxury of being like, you have to either work with us or like you can't solve for this joint value prop. So I feel that so much because it's like on both sides, like I want to make sure that I, make people's day better when they talk to me so that they don't go talk to a competitor, or at least like I'm staying top of mind more so than the competitor, right? And vice versa. Like if I'm talking to a potential partner or a couple of them that do sort of the same thing, we can solve the same joint value prop together. Like a huge part of who we end up working with is going to be how we work together, how enjoyable it is to work together, especially when there's like feature parity, right? So I am very in tune with that advice, and I think it's some great stuff.
Awesome. I always like to talk to people that like being nice. Like,
right.
makes life easier.
We love it too.
Life is more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's full circle. It's been very enjoyable to get to chat with you, and it's been great. I feel I'm from the East Coast, and so I feel like being in the Midwest now with the mentality of like very cutthroat on East Coast definitely I've seen that a little bit like on Wall Street stuff, and then so I completely agree. I've seen that shift, like, and I hope that it continues to go in that direction because I think everyone's just happier, and I stamp of approval.
There's the whole like Kansas City nice thing. I'm sure there's Indianapolis nice and Minneapolis. My brother lives up in Minneapolis, and they've got the Minneapolis nice thing. So like, hey, it works. I love it.
Midwestern values all the way.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to get this out to the audience.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. It's been really fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andy.